I think I was sort of looking at it as a career from when I realised that it was a career. That, you know, when you're little, you just think that it's just playing. And I think I was probably sort of... I went to New York with my mum when I was 14 and we saw Cabaret, the production that's just been was remounted this year. We saw the original in Studio 54, and I think... And actually, when we went to go and see it this time, my mum was horrified that she'd taken me when I was 14 because it was quite full on. But it was that trip, I think, that it was theatre initially that I was sort of in love with, and musical theatre, which is not how my career panned out.
But you have sung on screen a few times.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I'm not. I kind of got to a point where I realised that you needed to really sing and you needed to be able to dance and all that kind of stuff. So then I got more interested in straight plays, and so that's kind of the direction I went in. So I think it was kind of that trip to New York when I saw these Broadway shows that I kind of decided.
But your parents were reluctant for you to go into acting. What was the reason for that, and how did you persuade them, or did you just not listen?
Oh, I didn't persuade them. Yeah, they were, you know, for all the reasons that you would imagine, you know, and the reasons that I now can rationally see are very good reasons. But at the time, yeah, they were very worried about it being a kind of unreliable job and a very disappointing one and a difficult one. So yes, they weren't sort of that into the idea, and I tried to find my way, and I applied to lots of drama schools. I was rejected by all of them, and
idiots.
Well, I don't know. You know, I was like 17 years old and going into these auditions and doing Sarah Kane pieces about suicide and trying to be very deep, and had, you know, absolutely nothing to draw from. And I think, you know, they saw straight through me and quite rightly didn't let me in. And then I went on to sort of get my first job just after I left school. So that was sort of my way in.
Well, opportunity knocked for you when Julian Fellowes, the Downton Abbey creator, came to give a talk at your school, and you followed up. Tell us the story about how he was initially not so helpful, but then ultimately became helpful to your career.
Yeah, I said, I want to be an actress, and he said, well, marry a banker or a lawyer. And that was sort of it. And then after I was rejected by all the drama schools, I contacted him through my headmistress, and I said, you're the only actor I've ever met, and you know, I don't have any kind of route into this, and I think if I go to university, then I'll drop out, and that's a waste of time. So, you know, what advice can you offer? And he took me out for dinner with his wife and a lot of other people who'd obviously also written sort of these sort of letters, and they were amazing. They sort of recommended a brilliant workshop, theatre kind of television and film workshop in London at Riverside Studios that I went to every week for about a year. And they also told me that there was an open casting happening, and that Gina J, who cast Pride and Prejudice, her assistant was meeting lots of young girls who'd never acted before to play one of the sisters in Pride and Prejudice. So I went and met Robin, who was Gina's assistant, and did an audition tape. My first audition tape, which he very much coached me through, because I was doing a very big theatrical performance, and he kept on trying to he kept kind of making...
Do less.
Yeah, do less. And that turned into my first job.
And what a first job to have, 2005's Pride and Prejudice, directed by Joe Wright. You must have thought, oh, well, this is easy. You know, here I am, you know, with Keira Knightley, Judi Dench, all the rest. I imagine it was something of an educational experience for you as well, to be surrounded by all this great talent. You know, were you like a sponge back then? What did you learn?
Yeah, I mean, I had very little to do, and and that was the case for a lot of the jobs I did in the first couple of years. I was kind of supporting, and it was great. You know, the most extraordinary people in that film, Brenda Blethyn and Donald Sutherland and Keira and Rosamund Pike, and in a way they also became, Keira and Ros and Simon Woods and all those guys kind of became my year group, because I didn't go to drama school, so we were all, you know, kind of the same age. And but yeah, I just got to watch, you know, Judi Dench and all these extraordinary actors and actresses, and no one was focusing on me, and so I could make lots of mistakes and, you know, and just learn a lot.
You've mentioned not going to drama school there. Now, drama school teaches you a lot about the process and building a character. So I guess with the classes you had to sort of find your own way. Tell us how you set about building a character.
I didn't really have a way of working until, I mean, on Pride and Prejudice, I literally copied everything Jenna Malone did. I mean, to like everything. And the way that she laughed, I would laugh. And, you know, the way that she delivered a line, I just thought, you know, I had no idea. I remember actually Joe Wright coming up to me. One of the first scenes we shot was with Dame Judi Dench. And I'd had dreams, actual dreams about working with Judi Dench when I was a teenager. And I was suddenly in this scene with her. And we did a couple of takes, and it's the scene where she marches into the house in the middle of the night and wakes us all up. And we did about 4 takes, and Joe came over to me and very sweetly whispered in my ear, and he said, Carey, you actually need to do something with your face. Because I was just sort of staring at her, you know. The whole thing was just so, like, gormlessly, like, oh, Judi Dench. So, yeah, it was a very... But so I didn't really have a way. I remember I had to cry in that film, and I didn't know how to, so I just thought about my mum dying. You know, I imagined terrible things happening to my family to make myself cry. And that's sort of how I worked for the first couple of years. I was just sort of making it up as I went along and didn't really know.
Well, one of those jobs you did in the first couple of years was a TV movie, My Boy Jack. And in that, you have to, your brother is about to go off to war, and you're terrified about it. Now, around this time, your own brother was a captain in the British Army. So was that an experience where you channeled your own feelings and put them into the role, or do you not like to go that close?
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yeah, I think it was. My brother had gone off to Iraq, and it was probably the closest I've felt in a lot of ways to some of the characters that I played. I mean, I very rarely have anything, you know, to draw from, thankfully, because some of the characters I played are awful. And so, yeah, that was probably the closest to it. But it's funny, it's a really difficult... it sort of feels like such a long time ago. It's quite hard to imagine what it was like back then. But yeah, I think I did sort of have a lot of angst as well, that my brother was there at the time. And so it was a sort of odd experience.
Your breakthrough role on the international stage came in An Education. There were so many actresses up for that part. How did you set about winning the role?
An Education actually happened over a couple of years. It was originally, it had a terrible title originally. It was called The Time of Her Life, which sounded so dodgy when you watch the film. Anyway, yeah, so it was over, and it had a different director originally, and then that changed. And then at one point, some time had passed, and I was being seen for Helen, which is the role that Rosamund Pike plays instead. And then it finally came back round, and it was with Lone Scherfig. And then it all came together quite quickly, all in a couple of weeks, and suddenly it was happening, and maybe someone else dropped out. Looking back now, maybe that's what happened. And then we started shooting it. So it was all kind of a whirlwind getting into that film. And I did a number of auditions for it. So I think that was just a whittling down process.
And talking of whirlwind, what was it like going through awards season? I mean, your first sort of major movie as a lead, there you are, you're winning the BAFTA, you're nominated for sort of everything else. How do you look back on that experience now? What are your memories of it?
Oh, it was amazing. You know, I had no expectations for An Education at all, and didn't really know what Sundance was, and you know, found the whole thing quite overwhelming, and I really expected it to come out in the Curzon in London, and you know, for no one to see it. So it was amazing, and it meant that I suddenly was sort of very quickly elevated to a point where I was getting offered things. I'd never been offered anything before. I'd always auditioned a lot. And it opened the door for me to be able to do Never Let Me Go, which I did kind of straight after that. So it was amazing. I think I was a bit freaked out, and I probably took it way too seriously. And you know, I was really nervous all the time, and sort of, yeah, the whole thing was, you know, a big kind of change very quickly.
And talking of big change, you're then sort of whisked off to the United States, and you do a mega movie like Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. So tell us what that experience was like to suddenly find yourself in the American movie big leagues.
Yeah, odd, you know, and brilliant at the same time. I mean, it was, again, another example, you know, it was sort of, I never would have had that in a million years before in education, and suddenly that was a possibility for me, and I was working with Oliver Stone, and, you know, that was kind of extraordinary. I think I kind of felt quite out of my depth at that point, and so looking back, I'm probably, I mean, I'm quite critical, but I sort of didn't really find my feet in that project quite so much, I don't think. But it was a great opportunity, and it kind of, you know, all these things sort of add up and give you the opportunities that you're looking for. So I really enjoyed the experience of making it, but it was challenging, and I was very, very kind of doing an American accent, and I hadn't quite figured it out yet, and it was lots of it was a bit of a battle for me, that one.
And you were balancing stage work in Broadway and the West End as well at this period. How important was it for you to go to the stage at this period rather than just do movie after movie?
I mean, the stage was where the roles were, really, and sometimes. I mean, when I did The Seagull when I was 21 in London at the Royal Court, and then did it on Broadway. And it was just my favourite experience of my career, and I mean, my very short career up until then, but I loved it so much, and I couldn't imagine finding another role like that I loved as much. And so when I did an education, I had a conversation with my agent, Tor, and she said, you're in this extraordinary position now, briefly, and it might be brief, where people are going to offer you things, and it's an amazing privilege. But as long as you're in it, you mustn't take a role unless you can't bear the idea of anybody else doing it. And so that became my sort of way of working, that when I was offered things, if I the next day I'm not really thinking about it, or I think, well, it would be fine if so-and-so took that part, I've let it go.
When you were doing the wonderful Skylight later on Broadway, I understand you had some words written in eyeliner on your dressing room mirror. These are our days, walk them, don't fear them. Maybe I've misquoted that, but how did those words embolden you? How did looking at that statement help you before going on stage?
Oh, I think it was just my mantra. I mean, these are our days, walk them, fear nothing. I think, theatre is cripplingly terrifying.
Really? I can't imagine how you do it.
And I think I don't know, I find it sort of, once I'm doing it, once I'm on stage, I'm happier than I am anywhere else, and I can't see anything, and I can't really hear anything, and the lights are very bright, and it's amazing, and I can very happily fall into it, but it's getting on that's kind of awful, and so that was my sort of just to get on stage mantra, to try and I think I've always kind of, and on Suffragette I had the same thing. I really wanted to be bold, and I have a kind of sometimes a fear that I have a kind of passive quality, and so I want to make very bold choices. So it was kind of about trying to remind myself to be bold in the choices I was making on stage.
And you made bold choices to do a couple of terrific movies, Drive and Shame. Tell us about your abiding memories of both of those.
Oh, Drive was amazing. I just wanted to be in one of his films because, he just makes these...
Nicolas Winding Refn.
Nicolas Winding Refn, yeah, who made Bronson and remind me... Valhalla Rising. So I just wanted to be in one of his kind of creations because they're just nuts. And I thought that was so cool. And Drive was just this sort of mad fairy tale. And I loved it. It was so much fun. And we barely said anything in the whole film. We just stared at each other. And it was great,
Not much dialogue to learn, but
no,
plenty of emotion.
Well, we just kept on coming in and cutting it out at the beginning of the day, and just looking at each other a lot. Which was great. And Shame was very kind of. I fought to get that job. I had a meeting with Steve McQueen, and about after like half an hour he tried to leave, and I followed him. And then he got in a taxi and said, I'm going to Soho. And I was like, I'm going to Soho. Weird. And then sort of, and so we ended up, and then, I sort of battered his door down basically to get that job because I just loved it so much. And it was really intense, obviously. If anyone's seen the film, it's pretty punchy stuff. But it was amazing. It was just, Steve McQueen's a complete genius, and he's such an amazing director and really pushes you so hard. And really he believes that you've got more and more and more and more to give until you're just completely knackered. And, all my scenes were shot at night. So it was a bizarre kind of experience, waking up at 10 o'clock to go to work and then shooting till 4 a.m, and going home through the streets of New York, kind of high from this extraordinary experience of getting to work with Michael Fassbender. And yeah, it was amazing.
So for those BAFTA actors watching at home, Carey's message is stalk directors even into taxis. that seems to pay off. You said about chasing specific projects. Give us a sense of what movies you want to do in future, what movies you don't want to do, and if recently becoming a mother, congratulations by the way, has impacted those choices in any way.
Yeah, I think the films. I mean, I'd like to do something contemporary now because I've done a kind of run of period drama, and yeah, I'm kind of just role-driven, director and role-driven, and just trying to find real female characters. I think there's just a lack of real women. People have, I've done interviews where people have said, "Gosh, you play such strong female characters," and some of them are decidedly not strong. And Sissy in Shame is a very weak character, but she's described as strong because she's written to be a real woman, very flawed and very sad, but a real woman. And so I sort of I have no real plan. I'm just sort of looking for more roles that feel real to me. And maybe more theatre and working with more female directors if possible, and yeah, that's sort of the plan.
Well, you played a classic literary character in The Great Gatsby. It must have been a daunting challenge in a way, because a lot of people have a special relationship with that book and expectations of how it should be played. So what was your approach to that? Yeah,
it was kind of one of those big casting process that was all over the news as well. It felt kind of quite tense and, like sort of trying to be on X Factor or something. It was kind of a bit, it felt...
Back to the singing.
Yeah. And so once I was finally in it, it was an incredible cast, and Baz Luhrmann's amazing. I did tons and tons of research to try and, it was a very, very big film, and I wanted to kind of keep it small in my own kind of, and not because I'd never worked on something of that scale and that kind of aesthetic. So I read a lot about Zelda Fitzgerald and Ginevra King and Daisy. In my head, my version became a kind of amalgamation of those two real-life characters, and then obviously trying to stick to the book. But yeah, I've done a couple of novel adaptations, Never Let Me Go and Mad in Crowd and Gatsby, and you're always kind of feeling the weight of the expectation and what people, and everyone, who loves the book has their idea in their mind of what that book's like, and you can't fulfill all of those ideas. So it's nerve-wracking, but yeah, you kind of have to go in with your idea and just follow through with it.
And you mentioned Far From the Madding Crowd there. What were the challenges there, both acting and physical?
It was quite physical, actually, yeah. We were outside a lot in very cold rain, running up and down hills, and
shot in England, then?
Shot in Dorset, which was so beautiful. And I actually, 2 weeks in, I was really badly thrown from my horse, shooting the last scene of the film, where I chased after him, and I had concussion for the rest of the shoot. So I kept on having to go to hospital and couldn't see straight. But
what a trooper!
Yeah, well, I just look a bit dazed about the film, maybe. Yeah, it was a really great. So, what was your question again? What was I? I'm still concussed, apparently, or I just had a baby.
How do you sort of find the? I mean, it must be so tempting to think, I'm ill and I can't work. But with all the sort of theatre that you've done, I guess this is something you just have to suck up and do it. Is that a lesson that you've learned as you go on? Yeah, kind of. I mean, I would never let anyone go on. I would never use an understudy unless I was dying. I can't. It would make me so sad. When I did The Seagull in London, I had my appendix taken out 2 weeks into the run, and I had to miss 5 shows, and it was awful. And extraordinary actresses came in and just played the role with a script in their hands. And Jodie Whittaker did it that night with an hour and a half's notice, came on and played Nina, which was unbelievable. But I was devastated to miss it. So I've always kind of felt, unless you're really, really suffering, you kind of need to show up. Well, one role you didn't miss was in Suffragette, which we screened recently here at BAFTA, and everybody loved it. So tell us what appealed to you about that project.
Gosh, there's so many things. I mean, I was just completely blown away that no one had ever made that film before. That was sort of the biggest thing. And that I didn't know so much of what went on. That I wasn't taught a lot of what you learn in the film about what these women went through, and I really wanted to be a part of the film that finally got to do it. And then there was this great team, Sarah Gavron, who'd done Brick Lane, and Abby Morgan, who I'd worked with on Shame, so that was really great. And it was a character that I'd never really played before. It was an ordinary woman who by meeting these women and joining this movement becomes extraordinary. And it's almost certainly a journey of enlightenment, but it's almost sort of radicalization, and I found that completely intriguing. And then reading about these women's lives and what these women sacrificed, and we did the research that we went into was really in depth, and we got to learn so much about them and read the diaries that they wrote in prison and the letters they wrote home and accounts of what they would how they were treated in the workplace, and so it was kind of this whole world opened up that sort of seemed to have been written out of our history books.
Having immersed yourself so much in that project, how does it make you feel to know that 100 years after the events of that film, there are still regimes in the world that deny women their rights? Yeah,
it's actually been the best thing about the last couple of weeks. Talking about the film has been really great because it's been the first time I've done a press junket where I haven't been really bored all the time. It's been nice talking about, because it does, so much of what happens in the film relates to today, and so many women are still facing, massive struggle and are living essentially the same as these women lived 100 years ago. So that's been kind of a highlight of getting to promote this film, is getting to talk about those issues. And actually, we did a really cool. I work with a children in conflict charity called War Child, and we did a screening of the film in London a month ago. And one of the beneficiaries of War Child is this woman called called Pauline from Uganda, who was 12 years old when she was kidnapped by the LRA and was a child soldier for 7 years. And when she finally escaped, she came to her village, and her village kind of rejected her, and she was contacted by War Child, found her and helped her get back into school and helped her have her education again. And she was talking so powerfully about how her education was her lifeline, and how this was what saved her. And it just completely, I was there with Sarah and Faye, who directed and produced the film, and we were, blown away. Just another reminder of how much women are still struggling everywhere right now.
Well, talking of great performers, I hear you're a huge fan of the work of Marion Cotillard. So when you watch her, do you sit there with a notebook and study everything that she's doing, or do you just let it wash over you and enjoy it? And why her out of all the great actresses out there?
But yeah, I kind of let it. I mean, I try and sort of absorb it by osmosis. I just think she's incredibly truthful, and I don't connect her from one role to the next, and I just believe every single second. I can't see her acting. I just believe that she's that person, and I don't see a performance. I don't think she's putting on anything. I think she's just completely becoming someone. I'm a kind of super fan.
She's also someone who doesn't sort of live in the public eye. You don't sort of know much about her. How important is it to you in your position to still retain some kind of anonymity or sort of mystery, and how easy is it?
I think it's completely vital, as an actor to have that, largely because you just make your life so much harder if people, if someone's watching you on screen and they're thinking about, the photo they saw of you coming out of a nightclub with whoever, and, whatever, other characters. I think it's a very... your job is to sell that you're somebody else, not to... I think you want to be able to just... People should fall into the story and just believe that you're that person, and not be relating you to lots of other things that they know about you that they don't need to know. But it's funny, I think we're sort of... It is difficult, and I'm not keen to talk ever about my private life. But people feel that they need... I did an interview with someone the other day, and they said, I feel like I just need to know what you're up to. And I was like, you don't need to know what I'm up to. You don't. It's not going to benefit you. I'm not really doing anything interesting. And I think it's a funny kind of culture that we got into now, where we need to kind of know everything about people, and really you should know as little as possible.
I noticed that your hairstyle and colour seems to be different from one film to the next. Is that about perhaps more than the characters? Is that, in a way, part of this effort to make sure that no one can keep you completely pinned down?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I try to not play the same role twice, so I try to be different people, and different people have different hairstyles, and it probably helps me to look different and, trick people that way into believing that I'm that person. And I also have a real aversion to wigs. So I tend to sort of do to my hair whatever they want me to, which has led me to having some pretty dreadful haircuts in the past. But I think it's good.
What's on the horizon for you? Have you got your next project lined up?
No. No, I don't. No, I mean, it sort of seems to... worked like this, or it has since I had my very good advice from my agent, that things kind of come along in swathes. So I did Mad in Crowd, Suffragette, and Skylight in New York and London all in one sort of stretch. But previous to that, I'd taken 18 months off because I just couldn't find the thing that I wanted to do. And then all these things came in one quick succession. So I'm at the moment, the right thing hasn't come up yet, so I'm just going to sort of wait it out.
Some actors get restless waiting for the new project, but you can cope with it all right because you have faith that it's all going to, three greats are going to come along like three buses?
Yeah, I mean, thus far I've kind of felt that way. I don't know. I mean, I think it changes all the time, and it changes depending on, you know, whether people see you in films or not. And but yeah, I mean, so far I'm, you know, extraordinarily lucky to be able to take time off. But at the moment, I feel that I can, you know, I've worked with a lot of people, enough people that I've really, really enjoyed working with that I think I could work with again. That, you know, I'd love to work with Sarah Gavron again. I'd love to make another film with her. So maybe that might happen.
Now, it seems like it's all gone by in a blink of an eye. This 10-year roller coaster rocket ship of a career. How proud do you feel of yourself in how far you've come?
I mean, yeah, I feel. I mean, it's still very surreal. You know, it's very surreal to be sitting here talking to you. It's very surreal to be in a hotel in Los Angeles. I was actually, my mum's here with me, and you know, we drove past Century City the other day, and the first time I came to LA when I was like 21, I stayed in a hotel there, and she still remembers me calling her and being like, "Mum, I can see the Hollywood sign from my window." You know, and I thought LA was Century City, and that was my whole world. So it's very surreal, and I think, you know, from the beginning, I've always had people being incredibly generous, and that was a very much the case at the beginning, especially because I had no idea what I was doing. So a lot of people coached me through, and Joe Wright did, and Ian Rickson when I did The Seagull, and, you know, all these people kind of teaching me how to do this. So yeah, I do, and I feel proud of you know, lots of the films that I've made, and particularly Suffragette, because I do think it says more than most films, and that's really important. But I just mainly feel very lucky to have, you know, been taken such good care of by so many people, and to be given so many opportunities, and it's all kind of happened. You know, that's the thing, is when you actually get your dream to come true, it's a really weird, you know, you kind of, it's an odd but amazing experience, but very, very strange.
Well, it's been a dream come true to interview you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the wonderful Carey Mulligan.